Hello, this is Jon Sermon, church leader based in Suffolk and also chairman of the trustees of a charity called Romans 111 Trust. Now, if you watched yesterday's message of encouragement, I mentioned the plight of the Ugandan churches and schools and so on, and that I know of in relation to my work with Romans 111 Trust. Amongst the disappointing aspects of how the coronavirus pandemic has impacted the whole world, it is the very fact that I and another trustee, plus a visitor, were due to travel to Uganda in August this year. We normally have at least two of us go every year, and we visit something like 8 to 9 churches, about 8 schools, 3 orphanages, and travel all around the country, the southern half of Uganda, in a 2 to 3 week period. And we visit the 3 centres where our charity is involved in training Ugandan church leaders. We have a programme that offers them so much more than they would otherwise have in the way of preparation to do their work as church ministers effectively. And we are very blessed to be able to offer this to them. But I want to tell you about why the charity has its name. Because unless you recognize the biblical reference, Romans 1:11 just sounds really weird. And the fact is, it's the letter to the Romans, one of the letters of the New Testament part of the Bible, written by the Apostle Paul to the church at Rome. And chapter 1 and verse 11, well, it's also verse 12, really. Because verse 11 is where Paul's writing to the people in Rome, and he says, I long to come and see you, so I can bring you some spiritual blessing. Now, in my previous work, I used to use a dictating machine. And all my written work, my reports and so on, I'd speak into this machine for my secretary to transcribe and type. And of course, if I said something and then thought, actually, that doesn't sound quite right, I could simply rewind and record over it. And when Paul was doing this, by the time the scribe had got it down, he couldn't rewind and change his mind. And I think, this may sound a bit irreverent, but I think he realised that didn't sound quite right. I long to come and see you, that I could bring you some spiritual blessing. It sounded too one-sided. And so verse 12 is where he goes on to say, what I mean is, you and I will be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. Now, Romans 1:11 is all about mutual encouragement between the UK and Africa. And our major work, as I've said, is in Uganda. So when we travel there and when we invite Ugandan pastors to the UK, which again was hoped for this year and not possible because of coronavirus, whenever this happens, yes, we can offer stuff they can't. And in particular, our training for pastors is more than most of them could hope to access otherwise. What they can offer us is real enthusiasm and faith like in the Bible times. I'm always struck by each time I travel in Uganda, I find people full of joy and exuberance who almost literally have nothing. Now, perhaps one of the side effects of this dreadful virus and the awful circumstances it is putting us under is that it makes us more ready to stop and think about priorities. And I illustrate this with my experience in Uganda. Wherever I have travelled, I see such joy in the Lord from their faith. And I wonder, what's the difference? And we in the UK, yes, we have serious poverty. That's why we need food banks that the churches and other organisations provide. Yes, we have people in disadvantaged circumstances. But it's not quite on the same scale. A family that is poor in Uganda might have no brick-built home, just corrugated iron. They might have no toilet in the house. They have a shared pit latrine in the village. They certainly wouldn't have a bank account, and they live very much hand to mouth. And I look at it and think, in material terms, they are very, very poor. And broadly speaking, we in the West, not just in the UK, by comparison, we are materially rich. But we have found ourselves over generations getting more and more aware of our material security and putting our faith in it. It's almost as if we've become materially rich and spiritually poor. And when I travel in Uganda, I see a people who are materially poor yet spiritually rich. And that encourages me so much. To be honest, every trip to Uganda, I find that whilst, yes, by God's grace, I'm able to bring some encouragement to the people there, the encouragement I receive from them is actually more than mutual. It's so much more than I can give. And I wanted to tell you about this really to put our own situation in perspective. Yes, it's tough. Yes, we face awful circumstances. And yes, we are right to rethink our reliance on our material security and be open to greater spiritual wealth. I also want to add a point about the work of Romans 1:11 Trust. We are a tiny charity founded by Reverend Dr. John Hall, a United Reformed Church minister, within our lifetimes, and the work is so valuable and meeting so much needs. We have sponsored children whose schooling is provided for, whose food is provided for, and in all of this, what is to us relatively modest sums, maybe £15 a month, does so much more in Ugandan terms that would cover the cost of sponsoring a child or sponsoring a pastor or sponsoring a place on our training program for pastors. And I'd like to encourage you, if you're not already familiar with us, our website is there, but it's currently being worked upon and rebuilt. You can find us on Facebook, Romans 1:11 Trust. You can inquire through me. But in these times, one of the things we know has happened is that charity income is reduced. Big charities have government-backed schemes to help them. Tiny charities like us need to keep God's work going in such valuable ways does depend on individuals and churches making donations. Do pray about that and consider supporting the work. Our dear brothers and sisters in Uganda benefit so much, but we can't do it with no funding. And let us receive that mutual encouragement I talked of being blessed by what we know, what I'm telling you of their faith and their approach and their spiritual richness. I pray that you will receive a similar encouragement and spiritual richness. Bless you.